I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 7 o'clock. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. So Keir Starmer's facing fresh turmoil as his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, has resigned. Her exit follows reports of tension in Number 10, including with the Prime Minister's Chief Advisor, Morgan McSweeney, who's now stepping into her role. Conservative leadership contender Robert Jenrick says her departure exposes vicious Labour infighting and claims the government is in freefall. In a response, Downing Street has announced 5 new senior appointments, with Sir Keir Starmer insisting the changes will strengthen his team as he approaches 100 days in office. The Prime Minister has raised concerns that the sparks of war in the Middle East are igniting tensions at home, with a sharp rise in hate crimes against Jews and Muslims. Writing in the Sunday Times, he also raised fears of a direct conflict between Iran and Israel, which he says could have catastrophic global consequences. The PM's warning comes as Israel expands its airstrikes in Lebanon. Massive consecutive strikes have hit Beirut's southern suburbs, with Israel claiming its forces have killed 440 Hezbollah fighters in its ground operation in the south of the country. A record-breaking 973 migrants crossed the English Channel in a single day. According to the official figures, they arrived in 17 small boats, surpassing the previous record of 882 set in June of this year. Yesterday's surge also came as 4 migrants, including a young child, sadly died making the journey. The total so far this year is now 26,000. Russia has launched more than 80 drones and 3 missiles at Ukraine in a significant overnight attack. It comes as President Zelensky prepares to unveil a victory plan during a crucial allies meeting in Germany on the 12th of October. This plan is expected to detail steps towards ending the war with Russia. While specifics remain under wraps, US officials suggest it includes a revised request for an increased military support and long-range missile systems. As Ukraine nears 1,000 days of conflict with Russia, Boris Johnson says the Russian president is bad, not mad. In a candid interview with GB News' Camilla Tominey, the former Prime Minister shed some light on his interactions with Vladimir Putin, providing a glimpse into their complex relationship.
He means no good for this country. He regards the United Kingdom as among their most important strategic foes, probably their most important strategic foes, which is a pity. But he's chosen that path, and we're now in a very, very unhappy position. And you know what he is doing in Ukraine is criminal, and it is also a mistake. It's a mistake for Russia. It's a mistake for Putin.
And finally, a new blood test that can detect 12 common cancers is getting a major boost, thanks to a £148 million investment in cutting-edge medical technologies. The Health Secretary says the funding will also help advance AI diagnosis and personalised treatments, with research hubs set up across UK universities. Wes Streeting, himself a cancer survivor, says the investment could save lives while strengthening Britain's role as a leader in life sciences. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The UK government gives away some islands, non-binaries get angry when asked what sex they are, and the Home Office goes after some sexist schoolboys. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics, and we've got a lot to cover tonight. Brendan O'Neill, the chief political writer at Spiked, will be joining me to talk about his new book that documents the reaction to the October 7th attacks on Israel 1 year on. A free speech row has broken out at Durham University as the student union has banned its debating society from taking part in the Freshers' Fair. Stephen O'Grady from the Free Speech Union will be here to talk about that case, and I'll be speaking to Dr. Heather Ryan, who will be joining me to talk about the role of physician associates in the NHS, as concerns are raised over the safety of patients. And of course, I've got a wonderful comedian panel here to answer questions from our lovely studio audience. And my comedian guests this evening are Josh Howie and Jojo Sutherland. Jojo, welcome back.
Hello, hello.
You
Lovely
seem
to be back.
spending more time in England than Scotland these
I
days.
am. I think I'm more down south.
Yes, you're turning your back
Yes,
on your
I have,
native
yes.
land.
Yeah.
I would.
It's too cold.
It is cold,
It's
to
too
be
cold
fair.
and wet.
It is.
Oh.
But I miss it. I think it's lovely up there.
No, it is lovely.
It is.
But I drove the whole way today.
Did you?
Yeah, 6.5 hours.
Get around so much, don't you? And you're gigging while you're down.
I'm gigging. Yeah, I'm here. I'm London, Manchester, Warrington, Liverpool, back to Edinburgh.
You never stop.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it. And Josh, what about yourself?
Yeah, I'm not doing much.
You're not doing much. That's right. By comparison, not very much. Although you were on the commemorative march today.
It was a memorial in Hyde Park. It was 30,000 Jewish people and allies.
Yeah.
Considering there's about 250,000 Jews in the UK, that's a significant amount. Came out.
Yes.
And it was great. It was very emotional. There was people talking, including the mother of one of the hostages. She's a British citizen, dual citizenship, and we just don't hear about her in the media at all. She's been held for a year.
Yes.
By rapist terrorists, and no one talks about it.
Well, I think it's fair to say the media has intimating all the other channels, except for this one. But I'm going to be speaking to Brendan O'Neill later about his book on the subject as well, so stick around for that. But first, let's get some questions from the audience. Our first question is coming in from Mike. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Andrew. Should we be concerned about the increase in the far right in Austria?
Yes, so this is the Freedom Party, Austria's Freedom Party, which has won 28.9% of the vote, which is almost 3 points ahead of the Conservative People's Party on 26.3. But, Josh, it is the case, isn't it, that it's one of these coalition situations. The Conservatives who were runner-up, they don't want to do a coalition with the Freedom Party. But there seems to be a lot of cases where you have these parties, like Meloni in Italy, like Le Pen's party in France, where their origins are far right. They claim no longer to be far right, but they're the ones that are now winning across the board. Can you help us understand?
Well, look, I do not like the far right, as long as it is the far right. And frankly, I'm just not willing to believe that label as much anymore, because the people who bandy it out, sort of anybody who is to their right of you being far left is far right.
Now, this is the real problem, isn't it? Like, with the AfD, there are some members of the AfD in Germany that have said some properly dodgy stuff, which I would classify as far right. But given that I constantly hear people being called far right, including people I know who are on the left, I now no longer know...
Including yourself.
Including myself. Now I no longer know what it means or whether it means anything.
Exactly, and that's the problem of the distrust in the mainstream media that we've seen over the last few years, where you don't feel you can trust what they're saying anymore, because they're saying it with an agenda and not actually just presenting the facts. Now, it could be this Austrian party is far right, and that's bad, but the way that they're saying it in the newspapers that I read, or the article I read in The Guardian, was like, and the BBC was like, oh, they're far right because they're trying to control migration. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't make you far right.
No.
That makes you a realist about how society is moving forward.
And here's another problem, is that people will gravitate to whatever party is going to talk about the things that haven't been spoken about,
No,
right?
absolutely, and everybody has their own agenda, whatever it is. But I think we've lost the ability to basically give everyone the benefit of the doubt until they let us down.
Yes.
And so this, like you say, this far right, far left, you know, it's basically far right now is anyone that disagrees with my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
So
It's not very helpful, is it? And of course, the migration issue for a long time, people have just been branding people racist if they even raise the issue.
Yeah, and I think people are just putting their heads in the sand, and we've lost our sort of ability as well to sort of just trust our own intuition and our own experience around us. And if people are genuinely feeling that things are changing around them and that there is a noticeable difference in their day-to-day life,
yes,
and they're beginning to show concerns about it, even if you just start with a gentle question, if that is immediately slammed down with, oh, you're a far-right racist, you go, oh, well, I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah, it's a real
and it's
problem.
Well, it's dangerous and it's unhealthy.
It absolutely is. OK, well, let's get a question there from Jeff.
Hello,
Jeff.
Andrew.
Hello.
It's been reported that some self-defining non-binary customers have been offered compensation by a firm because they've been asked whether they were male or female on a form or something.
Yeah, they were angry about it. And there were two firms, actually. It was Money Supermarket and TransUnion, and they've been forced to pay because they asked customers what their sex was. I mean, that's not that offensive, is it?
I don't know if it's about being offensive. Genuinely, when I read that, I was like, actually, if you go back to the Mr. and Mrs. question on a thing,
yes,
I didn't take offence, but I don't want to necessarily have a prejudgment. Yeah, so I still use Ms. and I still use my non-married name, don't I? I use my single name. And so the MX, I do think, is quite interesting.
Oh, yeah, I should clarify.
It's not...
This is the customers wanted to be known as MX.
Yeah.
MUX.
So you've got Mr. and Mrs. and you have Miss, Mr. and Mrs. and MS. And I actually don't see any problem with MX. And I'll tell you for why, because there was a study done that was interesting in terms of people's initial judgments from things.
Yes.
So emails were sent with a woman's name and the same email was sent with a man's name, and the proportion of people that replied to the one with the man's name rather than the woman's. So if you're just giving a heads up without what your sex or gender is,
yes,
I think it's quite nice to just put in anonymously.
So, Josh, would you be happy if I call you Mux Howie?
No. Right. Yeah, straight. No, I mean, I think it's a lot more serious than that. And I agree that there is something for blind sex associated, certainly things where... But then when it is something, in this case, insurance, where we know, you know, women drivers... No, joking. But when it makes a... Going to lose any allyship there.
We've lost every female...
Let's just say,
viewer.
Men or women, if it's young men, then you are going to have, worst case, you're more likely to be into an accident. The point is, sex makes a difference when it comes to car insurance. It just does. I'm sorry, and let's not get into...
Yeah, it makes a difference to accidents as well, because women...
don't have many accidents.
Well, no, they do. Well, they have worse accidents because seatbelts are not designed for women, are they?
There we go.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, let me make another point, Jojo, just to counter it a little bit. So the Ms thing, I think, is right, because what Miss or Mrs. did was... force people to announce their marital status, right?
Yep.
But what MUX does is it implies that there is such a thing as being neither male nor female, which is not true. So it's an idea. It's a statement of ideological intent. So why should it would be like, I think, an insurance company saying, "What religion are you? You know, you must put your religion down, or whatever it might be." You know, and I'm not sure that they should be compensated for being asked a question which is legitimate, I think.
And, I mean, yeah, I see your point in that, and in terms of, you know, the statistics, when you break it down to just male and female and teenage runaways...
Yes. But you think insurance companies shouldn't know your sex?
Well, I think it does give... It's that absolute thing of going, well, if you're a man, you're likely to drive faster, or if you're a woman... I mean,
it's about the statistics, isn't it?
There's a brilliant joke about the Joey Lyons did going, you know, be very careful when you read those adverts. One careful lady owner, you know, she said, yeah, this one lady, careful lady owner, drove for a half an hour with a handbrake on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like...
To be fair, I've done that.
Sorry, can I say something? So this issue, actually, I think has gone slightly squiffy in that it's exactly what you're saying is, this is the non-binary, which is not real, being given legal protection. And that is a real problem now because they are they've been given under the Equality Act in 2003. There was something to do with finances. There was some court case a few years ago.
But non-binary identities aren't protected under the Equality Act.
But this is why it is. Like they're saying this court case says it is,
or it should be,
which sets more precedent so that people could just. So it's just made up. It doesn't exist, and now it exists in at least some part of law, and it's a creeping situation.
I get what
here.
you're saying, and it's not just about Money Supermarket. Is it? It's about
everything's about Money Supermarket.
There are broader issues at stake. Right, we've got a Rupert in the audience, which I love because we never have enough Ruperts.
Rupert, you haven't got the trousers on.
No, I know, but it's true. But it's a good name, Rupert.
Right, I'd like to ask the panel. There's a story today that the Home Office are trying to prevent the terror investigation unit to look at misogynist children and bring them under the Terror Act. And I wonder what the panel.
I'm all for it.
Well, Jojo, is it terrorism for Josh to say the things he does?
No, because it's an opinion. It's whether you act on it or not. And interesting again, that article said teenage boys.
Yes.
I mean, girls are misogynist as well. Do you know what I mean? So do teenage girls come under that banner?
No, but if a teenage boy says, or Josh says, women should be in the kitchen or they can't drive as well.
I agree. No,
By the way, I should point out I'm the one who cooks at home.
Yeah, exactly.
And you cook for a lot of children.
I do
So, it's no mean feat. But I mean, should we really be involving a counter-terrorism unit in school children at all? I get very nervous about this full stop.
Well, this is it. We're getting back to that whole, what you say and what you actually do. And, so if somebody, have we lost the sense of humour? And we talk about this all the time. If somebody said, a woman's place in the kitchen, as a joke, we can't define what a joke is anymore.
Yes.
So if that's now going to become, I mean, it seems like absolute, again, just such an explosion
so
of
here's
emotion.
the difference, I think. So, Josh, I think if, as you know, I was a school teacher. I think if I would have spotted signs that a child was coming from a family who were, I don't know, radical Islamic fundamentalists or whatever it might be, there should be some way that I could pass that information on if there was some sort of danger there. But if a child says something sexist, I, as a teacher, am perfectly well equipped to challenge that in my own way without involving the state.
Absolutely. Yes, and I think that there is an issue with misogyny amongst young boys and men, and it grows up to them being young men, and it can come out in terms of violence and whatnot. It's a problem, it's a real issue, it needs to be dealt with by teachers, by getting in there. But Prevent was set up as an anti-terrorist organisation, or to prevent it, particularly Islamic fundamentalism. Already there was a report coming out last year that said that they've lost their focus, they've moved on to other forms of extremism and stuff like that. Now, if that's important and that's where all the people, the reason they're getting killed is because for those reasons, cool, but that isn't.
No, but it never is. But all of these things are always weaponised. I mean, I'll give you an example. Later on in tonight's show, I'm interviewing Reverend Dr. Bernard Randall, school chaplain, who was reported to prevent the counter-terrorism unit because he gave a sermon to the school on identity politics and suggested you should be able to think about things from all sorts of different angles. And he was reported as a potential terrorist by the school. My point is, and I think Josh's point as well, is whenever they set these things up, good intentions, but then they get weaponised.
No, but
for all
good
sorts
intentions,
of
but
points.
also again, actually, I'm going to ask Josh, really, in terms of, I know you're saying, misogyny is a problem, and it is, young people, and the sort of Andrew Tates are always quoted. But again, my experience, I've got, 21-year-olds and 23-year-olds and their friends, and young men that I know, that sounds awful, I know a lot of young men, but young men that I know are probably the most polite, respectful, charming young men that I've come across for a long time, friends of my daughters, so that's not my
I think that's the same too, but that's not to say that there aren't people raised in misogynistic households or with domestic violence who complete those
teachers can handle it, Josh.
Well,
I honestly think that.
I
don't think teachers and parents.
I do too, but I think teachers combined with some sort of lessons or something, I don't know, which could teach them about, they get, when they're teenage boys and they just get stupid but to direct those energies better.
Yeah, I just
teenage boys are always going to be stupid. It's their hormones.
Well,
they're
of course,
stupid.
Well, directed a bit, but certainly they don't need to be reported as terrorists.
No. OK, let's move on to Ant. Where is Ant? Hello.
Good evening, panel. After yesterday's terror march in London, should Mark Rowley, the impotent Met Commissioner, be made to carry a I Love Hezbollah placard and transferred to a terror tunnel in Hezbollah's Lebanon.
Well, given the way you phrased that question, I think I know where you stand on this issue. So we don't need to. But it is interesting, isn't it? Because, of course, we saw marches yesterday in London, also in Dublin, and we actually saw banners openly in support of Hezbollah and also in support of Hamas. I mean, it boggles the mind. I don't know where you even begin with.
These marches have been going on for a year. They've been going on before Israel even went into Gaza, before they'd responded to the 1,200 people murdered, the 250 people who were kidnapped. People were out on the street celebrating these organisations, terrorist organisations, and it's terrifying that it's taken...
Which is illegal in itself.
Which is illegal. The police instead arrest the person who's got a poster saying Hamas are terrorists.
Yes.
And they are letting... and have just sort of ignored all this other stuff for the past year, and the chickens are coming home to roost because it's emboldened them, that they feel like it's acceptable. But the other crazy thing is that you've got people who consider themselves the progressive left allying themselves with, or even carrying these posters themselves, of organisations, terrorist organisations, who stand for the control of women, the covering of their hair, homophobia, as well as, of course, anti-Semitism and whatnot. So it's mental.
There's a real kind of I'll be talking to Brendan O'Neill about this later, but there's a real failure, a real demonstration of moral cowardice or a moral failure to understand this situation. And I don't, one of the points, I mean, Josh mentioned, Jojo, the way in which someone holding a sign saying Hamas are terrorists, they're the ones that are arrested, and they're pulled away for their own safety. But I would have thought that anyone who genuinely cares about the Palestinian people would be the first to condemn Hamas. 100%. Why aren't they doing that?
And I honestly don't know, and I'm with you, Josh, not in any way the way you must be feeling. It is mind-blowing that the people around me, again, we've gone from the knowledge of the absolute barbaric behaviour. Long before this, just in everyday life, there was no wars, just the treatment of women in Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, everywhere. We have not had knowledge of this ever since I've been alive. I've been fearful of the way that other women have been treated in other parts of the world that break my heart. And to then see that be not only completely forgotten, but basically backed up, going, what are you freeing Palestine from? Because it's not the Jews, it's not Israel. They were under... Hamas have got the most horrific record in looking after their residents. The money that they've been given from countries, Lebanon, all that Iran has supported them, has not been used to protect. So, OK, let's have it their way, OK? Let's get rid of Israel, let's free Palestine and watch those poor people be absolutely murdered, battered, bruised, sexually... It's actually legal. It is legal to rape your wife in Palestine. It is legal to sexually assault. It is legal to marry a child. It is legal to cut off women's genitals. Is that what we're freeing them for? Is that what we're going to give them back? Well done, us.
OK. Very quickly, before we go to break, I just want to come back to Ant. I think you wanted to make one more point.
Just one thing to follow up on. Radio 4 this morning, the Biased Broadcasting Corporation, on the anniversary of the 7th of October pogrom, referred to it as a cross-border raid. It's a shame.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. OK, well, we will be covering this a lot later when Brendan O'Neill comes on to talk about his book. But we must take a break, so I must say that don't go anywhere, because we've got Professor Jo Phoenix after the break, who's going to be talking about a new report that she's co-authored, which summarises the slew of gender-critical victories in courts over the past few years and what the significance of that might be. So please, don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We are now delighted to be joined by comedian and my beautiful friend, Francine Lewis, who's here to share with us her upcoming book, The Last Laugh, and an exciting competition in collaboration with none other than that mean Simon Cowell. Francine?
He's not so mean anymore.
Oh, is he not?
He's not. And do you know what?
Having a child, is it maybe?
Definitely. It's really weird because I really liked Simon. He was nasty. I just found that, I don't know, quite sexy. Now he's way too nice. Way too nice.
That's what they say, isn't it? You get all the nice guys say, I never get any luck with women, and they always say I'm too nice.
Do you know what? The truth is, I've always thought Simon was lovely. He's such a nice guy. Like, when I was doing Britain's Got Talent, I was very, very excited, you know, to meet Simon again, because it was the second time I'd actually met him. And I always thought he was such a charming, lovely man.
Of course, you are more recently well known for BGT and your impressions and whatnot.
Do you know what? I do watch a lot of reality TV, a lot of that sort of stuff.
What do you watch?
I love Towie, whenever it's Love Island's on. Seriously, honey, 100% definitely. You got to watch Essie. It's all about Towie. Love it, seriously. So I'm always doing, you know, whatever the new reality shows are.
The favourite is Katie Price, and we've got a video. I think we've got a selfie video of us doing.
Have we?
Yeah, we have. From
I'm showing
years ago.
Tatiana to Katie Price, which she does amazingly. Come on, Tatiana, let's...
No, I don't.
Tatiana!
Katie, there's a mixture between Katie Price and Tatiana.
What do you think? I love when people take me off. It shows what a big star I am.
It's the lick of the lips.
The People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Professor Joe Phoenix has co-authored a new report on gender-critical belief discrimination in employment tribunal judgments. The summary, entitled Don't Get Caught Out, explores what the implications of victories in the courts may have. So here to tell us all about it is Professor Joe Phoenix. Joe, thanks for coming back to the show. So I want to ask you about the report that you've co-authored. What are the chief findings?
There's one startling finding. Normally, with belief discrimination cases, about 50 to 60% of them are settled either through ACAS or, fall out of the system, and only about 9 to 12% win. Right? However, with the gender-critical cases that we've seen, admittedly, it's relatively small numbers in comparison to, the 500 or 600 a year of belief discrimination. But what we're seeing is exactly the opposite. So with the gender-critical cases, particularly the secular gender-critical cases, we're winning at an 83% rate.
Now, that's astonishing. And just to clarify for people watching, so these are individuals, academics, who have made gender-critical points of view, perfectly legitimate beliefs protected by law, and have been harassed, bullied and intimidated at work. This happened to you.
Yes, indeed.
Of course, to such a severe extent that you were eventually diagnosed with PTSD.
Yep.
Terrible behaviour at the Open University.
Correct.
So it's absolutely clear from your report, from what you're saying, that this is clearly illegal and everyone who's engaged in it will continue to lose in the courts.
Yes, yeah.
So why do they carry on doing it?
Well, that's a great question. So I once asked Aqua Reindorf-Casey, who is a specialist in these matters, how we can turn these judgments into justice. Right, because that's really the question that you're asking, isn't it? How can we create organisational change? Her retort to me was, the judgments are justice. So there is a problem because the employment tribunal system doesn't work to change employment places. You get compensated for the horrible things that happen to you, but it doesn't, if an employer wants to carry on discriminating, they can. So I think what we're beginning to see, though, just in the last few cases, so we've got the Roz Adams Edinburgh rape crisis coming up. We've had Lizzie Pitts, who settled on the steps to the court. We're beginning to see in these cases the legal teams going after costs. Right, that's unusual in an employment tribunal.
Right.
And the only time you get awarded costs is if the other side has behaved so badly that it offends the court, in effect. But we're beginning to see costs awarded now.
And money talks.
Oh, money talks.
Yes.
Money talks.
And this is the thing, isn't it? When you have this kind of degree of ideological capture, it's almost as though these judgments aren't going to matter. I mean, in your case, with the Open University...
Yeah.
They should have just come out straight away and said, we were wrong, I can't believe this happened, it'll never happen again. That didn't happen, did it?
Oh, my goodness, it did not happen, no. And, in fact, treating myself as an example rather than myself, if you follow what I mean, if you look at the progression of the cases, so we had Forstater, sex is immutable, and that's a protected belief. Then we have Bailey, and the tiny bit that got added to the case law there is that it also covered sexuality. Right? And then we had Denise Farmy's judgment.
Who's also been on this show, yeah.
Yeah, who's also been on this show. And that was actually just about how a workplace organisation where her colleagues had issued a petition and acted appallingly. The managers tried to intercede, but they didn't do it quickly enough. So suddenly we're getting, OK, what's the managers doing, right, in the cases? And then my case comes, and that's quite a ground shift, because the judgment in that case actually said there's a dominant workplace gender-affirmative culture. And in a situation like that, managers, well, in the OU, managers were institutionally fearful, institutional cowardice.
Right.
So they didn't act, and that's where they fell down. And then by the time we get to Roz Adams, there's yet another layer that's added, and that was extreme gender ideology.
So is it the case that these have a cumulative effect?
Yes, they do.
Right.
I mean, nobody has to pay attention to an employment tribunal judgment, right? It's advisory only, but they still accumulate.
So the OU, of course, commissioned their own response to the judgment in your case.
Yes.
I'm gathering you're not impressed by it.
Sorry, I don't mean to actually smile and laugh, but I can smile and laugh a year later now. Yeah, the Dandridge review, I feel for Nicola Dandridge. She took the job on. The terms of reference are just about as rotten as you can get, because they are how to balance academic freedom and freedom of speech with EDI.
Which equity, diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, equity, diversity.
Which, of course, is an ideological stance. Yeah.
Exactly. So how do you, as soon as you put anything after, balance academic freedom, freedom of speech with...
Yes.
Doesn't matter what it is, right? It's going to go hideously wrong.
Absolutely.
So it was supposed to be an independent review, but Professor Dame Nicola Dandridge was, in fact, the CEO of the Office for Students at the time that I was suffering at the OU. The Office for Students has a regulatory function over universities, and in fact, some of your audience may realise the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act that Labour just halted recently, that gave the Office for Students new powers to enforce universities to uphold academic freedom. So she has some knowledge about why it is that we needed an enforcement mechanism.
Yes.
Didn't do anything about it. She accepts a brief that balances academic freedom with EDI. She bases everything, I think, looking at it on the Higgs decision, right? That's, you know, as Maya Forstater once called it, the sniff it test, to see if the ideas are offensive. But then what she does, which in my head just partly blows my mind and why I keep giggling about it, is she speaks to about 100 people at the OU. She asked to speak to me. I declined the invitation. And she speaks to them, and she treats what they say at face value. So quite a few of the people said, we find gender-critical beliefs offensive and they take away our rights. She didn't subject that to any question. She just took it at face value.
Well, as you say, she's balancing this idea of academic freedom against other people's feelings.
Yeah.
Effectively.
100%.
So finally, Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, has curbed the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act. She did it the day before Parliament went into recess to prevent any debate from happening, or at least that's what it looks like to me. How can we make people understand that there is a problem with threats to academic freedom?
Well, I actually think, I want to believe that the fact that it's a problem has already been established. Right. So the real question is, how can we make people want to do something about it? Now, the do something that we need, universities, and, you know, I'm one to say this, having been cancelled by 2, universities get away with what they get away with because there's no enforcement mechanism, right, apart from a very expensive employment tribunal. And there's no enforcement mechanism if I'm a speaker, as we found out, an external speaker, as we found out from the Reindorf report. So the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act, it needs to be implemented.
Yes.
And I think if I was going to give one message, it's kind of like it's a non-partisan issue that needs to be implemented because universities cannot and will not sort themselves out.
Professor Jo Phoenix, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
And next on Free Speech Nation, chief political writer at Spiked, Brendan O'Neill, will join me to talk about his new book that documents the reaction to the October 7th massacre last year. Don't go anywhere.
Good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we go ahead into Monday, the rain should be clearing, then sunshine and showers for many of us before turning colder later into the week. So the unsettled conditions are all to do with this area of low pressure out towards the west and these fronts driving cloud and rain. So there could be some early evening sunshine towards the southwest, but otherwise cloud and rain continuing to move its way north and eastwards, affecting much of Scotland to start Monday morning. Clearer skies behind that, turning drier. We'll still see a few showers around, but temperatures generally staying up at around 10 or 11 degrees. So it is going to be a damp and gloomy start across Scotland. We've got outbreaks of rain persisting. This will gradually move its way northward. We've also got a strong easterly wind as well, giving a chilly feel to start the day. Cloudy conditions remaining across Northern Ireland with some showery outbreaks of rain here and pushing into northwestern parts of England. Further towards the south, hopefully waking up to some brighter skies, but also there are going to be some showers around. So that band of rain across Scotland will gradually move its way northwards, affecting much of Orkney and Shetland. Otherwise, it's a case of sunny spells, scattered showers. Some of these could be heavy, containing the odd rumble of thunder, perhaps emerging to give some longer spells of rain at times too. But where you do dodge the showers, we'll see temperatures rising up to 17, possibly 18 degrees towards the south, but unpleasant towards the north. Further spells of heavy rain moving their way northwards across Northern Ireland and into Scotland, and then towards the south through Tuesday, another cluster of showers. Again, could be on the heavy side. Some places may dodge these to see some sunny spells, and that continuing through Wednesday too. But as we go later on in the week, it is going to be turning colder from the north. Bye-bye.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Later in the show, I'll be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel. Josh Howie and Jojo Sutherland will help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So if you've got a problem, just message us, gbnews.com/your say. We'll help you deal with all of your problems. 1 year on from the 7th October attacks on Israel, chief political writer at Spiked, Brendan O'Neill, has written a new book called After the Pogrom, 7th of October, Israel and the Crisis of Civilization, which documents the reaction to the events of last October throughout academia and beyond. And I'm delighted to say that Brendan O'Neill, the author of the book, joins me right now. Brendan, thanks for coming onto the show. I want to start by congratulating you on the book. It's fantastic. And I want to ask you, you talk in the book about how we in the West failed a moral test. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think 7th of October, primarily it was a grotesque pogrom. It was the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And that's what we should remember tomorrow on the first anniversary. We should remember that this was the worst act of racist violence of modern times. That's the thing that we need to focus on. But I also think that side by side with that, it posed a test to the Western world. You know, Hamas, alongside its grenades, it also laid down a gauntlet. It essentially dared us to be decisive. It dared us to show our principles, and it dared us to stand with the Jewish state against this army of anti-Semites. And we failed. We refused to do it, and we failed to do it. And across the West, in the academy, on university campuses, on the streets, in left-wing political circles, many people actually took the side of the pogromists rather than the pogromists' victims. And I think it really raised to the surface a lot of the moral rot in our societies, and it really demonstrated how serious our crisis of civilization has become.
And can I ask you, you also describe in the book, you say that Israel, you describe it as the most hated state. Do you think there's a way for people to criticise the Israeli government without slipping into anti-Semitism? Because what I've seen from a lot of people who attempt to do so actually do slip over, and it seems to be that's very common.
Yeah, people say it's not racist to criticize Israel. Of course it's not racist to criticize Israel. If you go to Israel and you don't like the food, or you think it's too hot, or you hate the government, that's fine. That's how we feel about lots of countries. But we're not talking about criticism of Israel. What we've seen over the past year is boiling, irrational hatred for Israel, dreams of Israel's destruction, open chants on the streets dreaming that Israel will one day be erased from the map of the earth, a real venomous hostility, one that crosses the line so far from criticism, rational political criticism, into something far darker, far more elemental, far more guttural. So the point I always make is criticize Israel as much as you want, but what we have on our streets and on our campuses and in many of our newspapers right now is this myopic focus on the Jewish state as the most evil state, and that makes me feel very suspicious.
Can I ask you why you think people who self-identify as left, I mean, not all people, of course, but a significant proportion, have a real blind spot when it comes to anti-Semitism? They seem to say that they're completely anti-racist in all circumstances, but here they are supporting Hamas, Iran, groups that openly state their intention to eradicate Jews, not just Israel, Jews.
It's astonishing. You know, tomorrow will be the first anniversary of the worst act of racist violence of modern times. And I can guarantee you that self-styled anti-racists and self-styled anti-fascists won't say anything. They will not put up a black square on their Instagram page. They will not have any candlelit vigils. They will not shed a single tear, because they don't see Jews as being as deserving of their progressive sympathy as other minority groups. It's as simple as that. And in fact, over the past year, it's got even worse. They see Jews as deserving of hostility, as deserving of contempt, as deserving of opprobrium. And I think it's really down to the politics of identity, because when you have this politics that actually sorts people into racial boxes and which accords moral worth depending on skin color. So if you're white, you're privileged. If you're brown, you're oppressed, and they see everything through that narrow prism. And that's how they read the Israeli conflict. So they just see Israel as a white supremacist state, a white privileged state, deserving of nothing but contempt. And then they translate that onto Jews more broadly. So the greatest losers from the politics of identity right now, alongside women, of course, is Jewish people. And that's something we need to get to grips with.
One of the most astonishing things was that after the pogrom and the incidents of sexual assault, there were many mainstream commentators denying that there was sufficient evidence. And these are the same commentators that were part of the Me Too movement, who had supported the idea that we must believe all women. And you make a very good point in your book. You say that that phrase, believe all women, has now changed into believe fascists.
Absolutely. I had a bit of an issue, actually, with the Me Too cry, believe all women, not because I think we should disbelieve women, but because I think innocent until proven guilty is an important principle and we need to go through due process, etc., etc. But what was so striking was the way in which that slogan absolutely evaporated on 8th of October 2023. They stopped saying it. And in fact, they said, we don't believe these women. We don't believe there was sexual assault and rape in Israel on 7th of October. And they basically said, we believe Hamas, because Hamas issued really fervent denials that it carried out any such attacks against all the evidence that we have showing that they did. And so essentially, these people have gone from saying believe women to believe Hamas, believe terrorists, believe fascists. And that turnaround, I think, really demonstrates the paucity of modern virtue signaling feminism, but more broadly, the absolute lack of principle on the so-called progressive left when they can ditch their slogan so swiftly when it no longer suits them.
And finally, Brendan, some of the quotations that you provide in the book are quite astonishing, of figures who are celebrated by the left. People like Judith Butler, a celebrated gender philosopher, describing Hamas as progressive. Of course, Jeremy Corbyn described Hamas as his friends. What can the left do about this when their figureheads seem to be so intent on supporting, well, let's put it frankly, terrorists?
You know, the left is quite lost at the moment, and I feel sad about that as someone who originally comes from the left. I used to think the left was a pro-freedom, pro-enlightenment, pro-democracy movement, and it was once upon a time, but it has changed dramatically. It now takes the side of anti-enlightenment against enlightenment, and I think the commonality, people always say, how can we have queers for Palestine and all these gender-fluid idiots supporting a movement that would throw them off the roof of a building given half a chance? It's a good question. I think the commonality between the progressive left and Hamas and Hezbollah is that both of them have a burning hostility to the West, to modernity, to reason, and increasingly to the Jewish people. So there is this creepy commonality between these two movements in the West and the East, and the left needs to get its house in order before it really loses the plot.
Well, Brendan, the book is absolutely brilliant. It's called After the Pogrom. It's available now. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And next on Free Speech Nation, a free speech row has broken out at Durham University as its oldest student society was banned from taking part in the Freshers' Fair. A member of the Free Speech Union is going to be here shortly to talk about it. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A furious online debate has been sparked after, well, let's just say a rather large man, I mean, he really was big, was snapped trying to fit into his seat on a plane.
It's led to some to ask whether obese passengers should have to pay for extra plane seats so they don't inconvenience others.
Some say, though, that's cruel. So should plus-size passengers pay extra for plane seats? Let's talk to former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller, who's in Stratford-upon-Avon, and the director of All About Obesity, Sarah LeBrock, who's in beautiful Harrogate. Good to see you both this morning. Sarah, what do you think?
Well, we've had this debate before with Steve and I, to be fair, and I think it's one of those things where planes are just not fit for purpose anymore. So people's bodies have been growing over the years. We know this, the obesity rates are increasing, etc. But what's happening to planes is the seats are decreasing in size. So they're just not fit for purpose and not fit for the population. So I think it's just one of these things where we need to be more empathetic to people, that they're trying to fit into an environment that isn't shaped for them at all. So I think we do need to kind of say, well, what's right here? Is it the person not being able to fit in the seat, or is it the seat not being fit for purpose for the person. And I think we need to really, look at things from that perspective as well. Instead of thinking the person's doing something wrong, how about the environment might be doing something wrong?
Steve?
It's not about blaming, but the message you can't put out, in my opinion, is that it's okay to be obese and don't worry about it. You see, what I'm saying here is free plane seats. If you're offering free plane seats, an extra seat, that's going to normalise obesity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Earlier this week, the Durham Union Society, known as the Society, was blocked from taking part in the University of Durham's Freshers' Fair. The Society, which was founded in 1842 and includes more than 3,000 current and former students, has been banned from advertising at the fair because of an alleged failure to meet the requirements set out by the Student Union. Well, to speak about this now, I've got Stephen O'Grady, the legal officer for the Free Speech Union. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me on.
So, Stephen, this sounds a bit crazy, a debating society banned. I mean, isn't that kind of self-defeating?
It is, rather, and it's one of these sort of ironies. On the surface, it might just look like a student politics spat, but it really goes a lot deeper than that.
Well, what's their justification?
For banning the society is down to their failure to meet particular EDI requirements that the student union expects them to adhere to. This is in the context of a long-running dispute between the union and the society that goes back several years.
Well, I heard the word racist bandied about. I mean, what do they mean by that accusation?
Well, there have been a few things. About 4 years ago, the student newspaper, Durham, published an expose in which they accused the society of being colonial apologists based on certain allegations about what individual members of the society had said. Since then, there's been a changing of the guard. You know, it's a student-run society, so it's a new executive committee every year. The people in charge of it now are not the people who were even present 4 years ago. And there was one subsequent isolated incident of one member using a racial slur against another member. The society investigated it and they kicked the member out. So it's hard to think what more a society could reasonably do than
Well, I mean,
that.
yeah, it sounds like they dealt with that quite swiftly. I mean, is it to do with the types of guests they're inviting to debate?
Well, this is what we think the real issue is here, is that the Students' Union has a problem with the fact that the Durham Union Society invites both sides to debate a particular issue rather
you
than
wouldn't have a
taking
debate,
stance.
would you, if you didn't do
Well,
that?
exactly. It would be monologues and there'd be very little point to that.
So is the implication that basically, unless you invite all the people we agree with, you shouldn't be able to have a stand at the Freshers' Fair?
Well, they haven't put that in terms.
Well, they would.
It's rather more insidious what they're doing.
Yes.
That they have imposed these EDI requirements on them, and each year they tighten the ratchet on these requirements so that they have to do more and more to prove that they are doing the work and being better, and all the sorts of catchwords that we associate with that sort of thing. And nothing they can ever do is good enough to satisfy the Students' Union that they've met the requirements.
But EDI in of itself, as in equity, diversity and inclusion, is an ideological position to take to begin with. So what if you disagree with that position?
Well, there's very little option there, and it's sad in a way, because what they're missing out on there is they're just looking at demographic diversity instead of diversity of thought and diversity of opinion. You know, the way in which somebody fills in a census form is probably not a very interesting characteristic about them, but what they think about the issues of the day, that's far more interesting. But the Students' Union doesn't seem to think that that's important. It's merely whether they can tick the right boxes and have the right officers and policies in place.
And the Free Speech Union has got involved in this particular case, is that right?
That's right. We've written to the Pro-Vice-Chancellor of Durham University to remind the university of their duties. This is a bit of an unfortunate position because the university has some legal duties to secure freedom of speech on its campuses, taking reasonably practical steps to do so. However, the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act would have placed duties on students' unions in order to safeguard freedom of speech. But unfortunately, the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, put an end to that when she stopped commencement.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because the Free Speech Union is also raising a legal challenge against Bridget Phillipson for precisely that action.
Correct.
What's the update on that?
Well, at the moment, we've had the government's initial response, and we're currently waiting for permission to be granted on the papers, which we are reasonably confident will happen.
Is it just that the Labour Party doesn't believe that there is a problem with academic freedom or freedom of speech on campus, in spite of the fact that this bill was agreed by all parties?
Well, I think it would be very difficult for them to deny, with all the evidence that's available of various issues in various domains, that there is a legitimate problem there. What I think they're actually afraid of is that people will be able to speak their minds. That worries them a little, and so they've switched off the bill.
And is there any chance that the Freedom of Speech Act will be resurrected, or has Bridget Phillipson put the kibosh on it?
Well, as yet, we believe we will be successful in our case, and if so, then it will spring back into life, as it were, because it was due to commence on the 1st of August, and we have every confidence that a court will agree with our arguments.
Could you just finally let us know where people can join the Free Speech Union and why it's so important that they do?
Well, you can go to www.freespeechunion.org, and as a member, your contributions help us to take on issues like this, to stand up for individual members who find themselves cancelled. We support them throughout their process there, and to raise awareness about free speech issues.
Fantastic. Well, Stephen O'Grady, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
And it should be noted that the Free Speech Union's numbers are going through the roof, because there are more and more examples of this coming up, no doubt, so do join. That is the end of the first hour on Free Speech Nation, but please don't go anywhere, because there's lots more to come between now and 9 o'clock.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we go ahead into Monday, the rain should be clearing, then sunshine and showers for many of us before turning colder later into the week. So the unsettled conditions are all to do with this area of low pressure out towards the west, and these fronts driving cloud and rain. So there could be some early evening sunshine towards the southwest, but otherwise cloud and rain continuing to move its way north and eastwards, affecting much of Scotland to start Monday morning. Clearer skies behind that, turning drier. We'll still see a few showers around, but temperatures generally staying up at around 10 or 11 degrees. So it is going to be a damp and gloomy start across Scotland. We've got outbreaks of rain persisting. This will gradually move its way northward. We've also got a strong easterly wind as well, giving a chilly feel to start the day. Cloudy conditions remaining across Northern Ireland, with some showery outbreaks of rain here and pushing into northwestern parts of England. Further towards the south, hopefully waking up to some brighter skies, but also there are going to be some showers around. So that band of rain across Scotland will gradually move its way northwards, affecting much of Orkney and Shetland. Otherwise, it's a case of sunny spells, scattered showers. Some of these could be heavy, containing the odd rumble of thunder, perhaps emerging to give some longer spells of rain at times too. But where you do dodge the showers, we'll see temperatures rising up to 17, possibly 18 degrees towards the south, but unpleasant towards the north. Further spells of heavy rain moving their way northwards across Northern Ireland and into Scotland, and then towards the south through Tuesday, another cluster of showers. Again, could be on the heavy side. Some places may dodge these to see some sunny spells, and that continuing through Wednesday too. But as we go later on in the week, it is going to be turning colder from the north. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Well, the first thing on in my mind when I heard about this is, what has this country come to when we're talking about getting kids as young as 6 years old to be jabbed weekly or however often it is, because they are too fat. Where are the parents in all of this? There's three things actually here that are important. Number one is we do not know the long-term consequences of these jabs. So if I had a child and I was going to let them do, have the jab, I would be feeling like I'm treating them like a lab rat, to be quite honest with you, because we don't know the long-term consequences. Secondly, the manufacturers are clear that some of the potential side effects can be very serious. We're talking about potentially pancreatitis, let's get my word out, and also it lists as a potential side effect thyroid cancer. Arguably, it's called the gamble jab, to be honest with you, because of these potential side effects at the moment. And then thirdly, I come back to the parents. Where are the parents in all of this? Because they are the role models. So it really is about parenting, and it's about parenting from being a role model yourself in terms of being slim and healthy, and not expecting a jab to take your place and other people to take your place. If you have children, they are your responsibility. Think before you breed. The other thing you need to remember with this is when you stop taking that jab, it is highly likely that you're going to put all the weight back on. Now, the thought of a child of 6 years of age, starting with that jab, conditioning them mentally to live with that jab, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely not on.
GB News, the People's Channel.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, but let's get a news update first from Lewis Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. So Keir Starmer's facing fresh turmoil as his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, has resigned. Her exit follows reports of tensions in Number 10, including with the Prime Minister's chief advisor, Morgan McSweeney, who's now stepping into her role. Conservative leadership contender Robert Jenrick says her departure exposes vigorous Labour infighting and claims that the government is in freefall. In response, Downing Street has announced 5 new senior appointments, with Sir Keir Starmer insisting the changes will strengthen his team as he approaches 100 days in office. The Prime Minister has raised concerns that the sparks of war in the Middle East are igniting tensions at home, with a sharp rise in hate crimes against Jews and Muslims. Writing in the Sunday Times, he's also raised fears of a direct conflict between Iran and Israel, which he says could have catastrophic global consequences. The PM's warning comes as Israel expands its airstrikes in Lebanon. Massive consecutive strikes have hit Beirut's southern suburbs, with Israel claiming its forces have killed 440 Hezbollah fighters in its ground operations in the south of the country. A record-breaking 973 migrants crossed the English Channel in a single day. According to official figures, they arrived in 17 small boats, surpassing the previous record of 882 set in June of this year. Yesterday's surge also came as 4 migrants, including a young child, sadly died making the journey. The total number of arrivals this year has now reached 26,000. Russia has launched more than 80 drones and 3 missiles at Ukraine in a significant overnight attack. It comes as President Zelensky prepares to unveil a victory plan during a crucial allies meeting in Germany on the 12th of October. This plan is expected to detail steps towards ending the war with Russia. While specifics remain under wraps, US officials suggest it includes a revised request for an increased military support and long-range missile systems. Well, as Ukraine nears 1,000 days of conflict with Russia, Boris Johnson says the Russian president is bad, but not mad. In a candid interview with GB News' Camilla Tominey, the former Prime Minister shed some light on his interactions with Vladimir Putin, providing a glimpse into their complex relationship.
he means no good for this country. He regards the United Kingdom as among their most important strategic foes, probably their most important strategic foes, which is a pity, but he's chosen that path. And we're now in a very, very unhappy position. And you know, what he is doing in Ukraine is criminal, and it is also a mistake. It's a mistake for Russia, it's a mistake for Putin.
And a new blood test that could detect 12 common cancers is getting a major boost, thanks to a £148 million investment in cutting-edge medical technologies. The Health Secretary says the funding will also help advanced AI diagnosis and personalised treatments, with research hubs being set up across UK universities. Wes Streeting, himself a cancer survivor, says the investment could save lives while strengthening Britain's role as a leader in life sciences. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
With me, Andrew Doyle. Let's get some more questions from this lovely audience. And our first question is from Jill.
Hello. Recently, there's been a lot of controversy around Sir Keir Starmer's unilateral decision to give up the Chagos Islands. What do the panel think is behind this?
Yeah, Josh, there wasn't much of a debate about giving the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, was there?
I just think he was frustrated by how we're meant to pronounce it. Is it Chagos? Chagos? He's like, you know what? Take them back. Too much hassle. I got to, stop pensioners getting their winter fuel. Yeah.
What do you think about it, though? I mean, it's not the same as the Falklands.
This is a continuation of Tory policy, but the difference is that they had gone through 11 implementations of trying to negotiate this happening, and Labour did it in 2. Now, the question is does that mean that Labour are brilliant negotiators, or does it mean they kind of went, whatever?
Yeah, but since the decision in 2018 saying that it does belong to Mauritius, or should belong to Mauritius, aren't they just implementing that?
No, it is a continuous sign in terms of giving them autonomy. I think there are a lot of people who are looking for anything to attack Starmer with, and some of it's justified and some of it's not.
Yeah, but some people are saying this is a gift to China.
Well, there is that problem there. There's also the signals it sends about Falklands Islands, whatever. That is a different situation.
But shouldn't there be a debate? I mean, there is going to have to be a vote, apparently. This is the latest on this. There will be a vote in Parliament before this actually goes through. But surely he should have welcomed that to begin with, right? And it just looks a bit underhand.
Yeah, I mean, first things first, though. I mean, I heard of the Chagos Islands. I had no clue we had such a thing. In the same way that I didn't know we had the Falklands Islands until we invaded them. And
I felt the same way about Scotland.
No, exactly.
But defending everyone tonight, aren't you, John?
Everyone thought the Falkland Islands, including myself, was an island off the top of Scotland. So, do you know what I mean? Let's find out where it is first. Do we need it? And give it to Lord Ali, because he's been very generous.
That's true. He deserves to get some payback. OK, well, let's move on. We've got a question now from, is this Peter? Peter?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Andrew. Does this past week's vice presidential debate, is it a sign that American politics can become civil and polite? A market change from Donald Trump and his lies and bullying and assorted other bad behaviors.
So, Peter, you're from America, yes?
You can tell.
I can tell, yeah. You haven't disguised it well. What do you think about this? Because, I mean, I sense from what you're asking is that you think this was a far more civilised debate than the presidential debate, and I would agree with that. It felt like two sort of adults talking and disagreeing and retaining civility, I suppose.
No, exactly. And I think it's healthy to have a discussion about the issues and talk the truth. That way, the American voters can decide who they want, as opposed to just lobbing insults. That's not healthy for democracy.
Out of interest, do you know who you're voting for? You don't have to tell us what. But
yeah, I have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the American election at the moment, it was a relief to me to watch that vice presidential debate. I thought lots of interesting points were raised. I enjoyed the moment when J.D. Vance fact-checked the fact-checker.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really nice.
That's what we all have to do now.
Yeah. And we just do, don't we, at the moment? But any particular highlights from it?
Yeah, I liked Tim Walz's nodding.
He's
now,
good at nodding, yeah.
but like agreeing. And now some people took that to be a weakness. And initially I was like, oh, this is funny. He's just sort of agreeing with Vance's comments. And but actually you think, you know what? If your political opponent makes a good point, then acknowledge it. And maybe then go, yeah, you know what? I'm going to take that. I agree with that.
That's so rare now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's become tribalism.
Yes. And actually both sides have been attacking Waltz and Vance in the most insane, crazy ways. I mean, do you remember with the Vance thing where they made up something, some scurrilous sexual thing from his book, Hillbilly Elegy, which wasn't in the book, where anyone could have checked the book, and yet they still ran with it. And it's like, this is what children do, isn't it?
Yeah, but this is the world we live in now, where we have, like you say, with the fact check, we have to fact check everything. Yeah. And now we can't even fact check the fact checkers. BBC Verify is not fit for purpose. There was a report thing that came out this week about how they were trying to prove where the missiles land in Israel from Iran, and they deliberately said things were here and they were 5 miles away. These are the people who are meant to verify stuff.
Yeah, we have to really worry about fact checkers. Do you have a preference in the debate, Vance or Walt? Who do you think won?
Well, I think as well, I completely agree. There's something quite reassuring about watching two adults have a discussion where they do agree.
Yes.
Because I think that's part of the thing is we're also turned off by politics because it's like watching children squabbling.
Yes.
And it's so frustrating. People just argue and you can't get a point across. Even if I don't like, listening to the Trump one, it's like, I don't like you, but at least let me hear what he's got to say.
Yeah.
So that's the frustration.
But this felt like a step up from, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs.
I know.
All of that kind of thing.
But it's, again, I think politics really does need to go back to, at least some respect, instead of... It's like a roast battle in a comedy show.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
They're trying to produce memes.
Points, yeah.
They want a meme more than an actual point.
That's it. You've got the cats and dogs on the one side. You've got Kamala Harris going on about being brat, whatever that means. Yeah. But what about this other key point that was raised in the debate when they were talking about free speech? And Tim Walz effectively, did say that hate speech should not be covered by the First Amendment. He said it while Vance was speaking, so it was missed by a lot of people. But that's actually quite scary, isn't it? Because what he's saying is we can carve out exceptions to free speech as and when...
Absolutely, and you're right. He's in a way, he's lucky that it got swallowed up. But it is scary, and for Americans, that's a huge deal. The ability, free speech is there, right there in the core document. So it is a concern, but of course that is... The people who haven't thought about these issues, that's their kind of default point before they realise the dangers of saying or trying to even implement something like that.
What does hate speech even mean? Because no two governments can agree on what it means.
No.
The Scottish government definitely doesn't know.
Absolutely not. And it is there's a guy that wrote a fabulous poem called The Right to Hate. And it's, you should be allowed to hate people because we can't.
It's a human emotion.
It's a human emotion, like grief and fear and vulnerability. Do you know what I mean? You can hate something. Yeah. That's fine.
I hate that poem.
Yeah, there we go. No, very clever. Let's move on now to a question.
I just got the joke, sorry.
From Anton. Where's Anton? Hello.
Hi. Do you think that Keir Starmer knows what a lady's rights means, and does he still believe in them?
Well, I assume you're alluding to the Rosie Duffield resignation, and I have to say that letter by Rosie Duffield was a pretty scathing stuff. And I'm surprised she stuck around as long because she's had so much abuse. She couldn't go to the Labour Party conference because of all the threats she was getting from trans activists. She's been trying to stand up for women's rights to single-sex spaces. Totally legitimate points of view, which Nadia Whittome, on her resignation, then attacked her for and said she was trying to marginalise the most vulnerable people in society. Now, so Starmer, as far as I can see, Josh, as someone who is a Labour voter, Starmer is siding with the most reactionary and, frankly, stupid elements in his party, the Nadia Whittomes of the party. And Firstly, why didn't he apologise for Rosie Duffield? Why didn't he sit down and talk to Rosie Duffield? He never met with her. Of course she's going to resign.
Of course. that Nadia tweet, the most at-risk people in our society are women. They're the ones who are being murdered at a rate of 1 every 2 days.
Yes.
But yes, Keir Starmer, I think, is a fundamental weakness of his, it seems to be, this ability to admit culpability.
Sure.
He changed his position, as we all have the right to do, but when doing so and throwing her out to Rosie Duffield out to the wolves in the meantime, I changed my position and I've looked at that, the way she was treated, and to never have a meeting with her to talk it through is a failure of leadership.
And then, on this gender issue, he's got things so wrong. I mean, he lately said that, 99.9% of women don't have a penis. So you'd think he'd know that, being his dad was a toolmaker. It's a weird one, though, isn't it?
We'll give you that. Brilliant.
But Jojo, it is worrying when the leader of our country doesn't quite know what a woman is and punishes the women in his party for trying to explain it to him.
No, he knows exactly what a woman is. He's a coward. He just doesn't dare. He's so eager to please that he changes his opinion. He does 360. I mean, there's so much evidence of him saying, I absolutely won't do an interview with the Sun, and then doesn't interview the Sun. I won't, our pensioners need looked after, and I will protect our pensioners.
Yes.
And then, so, I mean, Keir Starmer says whatever Keir Starmer thinks will get him into power and keep him in power.
So is it that he's afraid
a
of the activists?
And he's a coward. And I was a Labour voter, then I was an SNP voter. Basically, everything I vote for goes to...
Yeah, OK. Well, I think a lot of us are with you, Jojo. A lot of us are feeling quite politically homeless, aren't we? I mean, you're still a Labour voter.
Well, I did because I thought he was saying what he wanted to get into power to then do good.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it seems like he's continued that pattern, and that makes me sad for this country.
I don't know if it's necessarily an anti-female thing. I think he's a bully, and I think he's a coward, and I think power corrupts, and then, it's just like he needs everyone to toe the line with whatever he's decided is whatever his opinion is that day.
OK, well, we've got one more question now from Joe. Where's Joe?
I'm here.
Ah, there you are. Hello, Joe.
Good evening, panel.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. A lot of Joes.
A lot of Joes.
Lots of yeah, Joe, and Josh.
Yeah.
Josh.
And we had another Joe earlier. It's a theme tonight.
It's a Joe show.
Yeah. What's your question?
Sorry, my question. Allegedly, the NHS are suggesting that fish and chip shops should perhaps be turned into selling fruit and veg because it's more healthy and will make the nation healthy.
What do you think about that?
I think we ought to be allowed to make our own minds up.
Well, it's controversial.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really going against the grain.
We all like a nice fish and chip supper on a Friday night, don't we?
Well, look, I read this article and I thought it was bizarre insofar as, just to explain, the NHS bosses are saying a particular fish and chip shop should sell fruit as well, and fruit and veg, so that it's got more of a balance within its menu. But surely, Jojo, you don't go to the fish and chip shop for some broccoli, do you?
No, exactly. And this is people just bending themselves and trying to keep everyone happy, like Keir Starmer. It's like a fish and chip shop. But it was when McDonald's would then force to do vegetarian and Greg's to do vegan. And you're just going, sell what you sell, and if people want it, they'll go to your shop. If I want a fish and chips, I'll go to a fish and chip shop. In the same way that if I want, a bra, I'm not going to a mechanic's. Do you know what I mean? Start selling bras and mechanics would be great.
Depends on your anatomy, maybe. But what do you make of this, John?
Well, if it's a deep-fried broccoli, I'm all right with it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. That the way. Yeah, I mean.
Well, potatoes, chips are essentially a vegetable.
Yeah, but as you say, it's not fit for purpose. People go out to a fish and chip shop for a treat. At home, they'll cook the broccoli and the carrots with their dinner, and when they go out, they want to eat badly.
But can I ask you about this, Jojo? Because the SNP have a track record of being a bit nanny state-ish. Trying to ban 2-for-1 pizzas, trying to raise minimum pricing on alcohol.
Yeah.
Shouldn't people just decide for themselves, as Joe is saying?
100%. And the other thing, because I travel so much, is, quite often going to a garage and I want a fizzy juice. And the amount of times I go and I cannot get a full-fat anything, I have to have something that is low or zero. Aspartame is vile.
Yes.
And how dare you tell me that, I can't have a fat... Because they're doing it so people aren't overweight. Hello, I'm fine, thank you, because I know how to eat.
Yes.
Stop.
Yeah, well, we're all a bit angry about that one, aren't we? Who would have thought that would be the most controversial topic of the show? Anyway, next on Free Speech Nation, the role of physician associates is raising questions in the NHS. Dr. Heather Ryan is going to be joining me to discuss recent calls for an independent review, as some are suggesting that the lines between PA and doctor are being blurred. Don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're joined by Lewis Oakley and Esther Stanhope. And Lewis, let's start with Free Gear Keir, shall we? It's been the story of the week, and apparently it's led to, calamity in the polls.
Yeah, so he has dropped by 26 points in the opinion polls. And, I mean, it's just been sort of going down from day one. He didn't even start that high. But, yeah, this is just bad optics. As we say, he hasn't done anything illegal or wrong. Everything was declared, but at the same time, you're telling people they don't get their winter fuel allowance, and you're there walking off with your swag bag. It's just not a good look. And even, you know, I was thinking as well the optics of them trying to clamp down on MPs having second jobs. You know, any of those could turn around and say, well, actually, we have to pay for our own clothes. I just think it's just bad optics that he's had. And, you know, we've got those comparisons of Sunak in the stands. He's just sat amongst the people. And
Prince William goes to Villa games, albeit in the director's box, but it's not an 8k per game seat. And by the way, can I just mention, this isn't just an isolated Labour incident. Since the start of their tenure, they were accused of filling the civil service with previous Labour donors, previous Labour aides, people who worked for Labour Together think tank. The civil service is meant to be politically neutral, and they bypassed a lot of procedures to get people into their positions, not least the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who parachuted Ian Caulfield, his name was, who donated £5 grand personally to her, and then he ended up in the Treasury with a 175k a year job. Yes, he did resign after it was revealed in the Times, but it does make you wonder, you know, you've spent years having a go at the Tories for this, and you do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's full of hypocrisy, and also the whole Sue Gray thing, and they were slagging off the Conservatives for not towing the line, and now they're being hypocrites because now they're taking freebies.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. The Academy of Medical Royal Colleges called last week for an independent review of physician associates. Known as PAs, physician associates are trained for only 2 years, whereas doctors train for between 4 and 6 years. PAs cannot prescribe medication, but they can order scans, take medical histories and conduct physical examinations. And there are now more than 3,000 PAs in England, but the NHS workforce plan has called for them to be increased to 12,000 by 2036. PAs have come under a lot of criticism surrounding safety and clarity of their role. So with me now to discuss this is Dr. Heather Ryan. Dr. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me. I just want to first clarify what physician associates actually are. My understanding is that they are not medical practitioners.
Yes, you're quite right. So the role of physician associate is a relatively new one in the UK healthcare system. They're healthcare professionals who have done either a 2-year master's degree after doing a science-related first degree or an integrated 4-year undergraduate master's course. And they're not doctors, and their training is much shorter. So to become a doctor, you either have to do a 5-year undergraduate degree or a 4-year postgrad degree. And then to become a GP, which is what I am, you then do a further 5 years of postgraduate training after leaving medical school, 2 years of foundation training and 3 years of GP training. So to be a GP in a GP surgery, you've been training for 9 or 10 years in total, whereas to be a PA in general practice, you've been training for 2 years. So it's, you know, although PAs do have some training, it's nowhere near equivalent to the training that GPs get.
And of course, one can understand the NHS being under-resourced, and you know this is a method of helping patients ostensibly. But the problem seems to be that a lot of people think that they are doctors and are misled into thinking that they are being treated by someone who has been trained appropriately. Is that the problem here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the job title is inherently quite ambiguous. And interestingly, the Royal College of GPs recently surveyed its members on the use of PAs in general practice. And one of the big themes identified by that survey was that patients often don't understand who they're seeing. And actually, some doctors have directly observed PAs not introducing themselves correctly. So I think you're right. I think there's ambiguity about the role. about the title, but also, you know, there have unfortunately been cases where patients have been harmed as well.
Yes, now I've heard there have been allegations of deaths even, people who have been, well, I suppose, prescribed things that they shouldn't have been prescribed, or maybe they've been given the wrong advice. How common has that been?
So again, I mean, there's been a few high-profile cases. So, you know, several cases in the media. We've all heard of the sad case of Emily Chesterton, who at the age of just 30 died after she was misdiagnosed by a physician associate. She had a blood clot in her leg, which spread to her lung and killed her, but the PA she saw thought it was a sprained calf and anxiety. There was a case in the Daily Mail recently in which a gentleman went to his GP surgery with headaches, saw a physician associate, was misdiagnosed as having tension-type headache, and it later turned out to be a bleed on the brain. And again, harking back to the RCGP member consultation, again, many responses there highlighted diagnostic errors and examples of incorrect treatment, including cases where cancer diagnoses have been delayed, as well as simpler things like tonsillitis.
And there's also been a scandal which was reported on this week at the Alder Hey Children's Hospital in Liverpool. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Alder Hey is a big children's hospital here in Merseyside, not far from where I live. One of my children's had treatment there. I believe they've been employing PAs for a few years now, and it's recently emerged that Alder Hey had a PA working within the safeguarding team, and they were undergoing child protection medicals. So I believe that the physician associate did child protection medicals on children who, it was suspected, had suffered neglect or physical abuse. Now, Alder Hey have clarified that the physician associate didn't do forensic exams on children who'd been sexually abused, but they were involved in the wider assessment of those children, including assessing their physical health. And earlier this year, Alder Hey redeployed that physician associate to do other work within the hospital because concerns were raised externally that the courts might not feel able to rely on the evidence of a physician associate. And so actually use of a PA in that context might be increasing the risk of a miscarriage of justice. And it's really interesting because guidance for doctors says that child protection medicals should be carried out by paediatricians who are registrar level or above. So these are doctors who, as well as medical school, have done 2 years of foundation training and at least 3 years of specialised paediatric training. So it's really shocking to me that Alder Hey felt it was acceptable that a physician associate with much less training could be a substitute for a specialist doctor in that situation.
I mean, this does sound very shocking to me, particularly that people don't understand who it is that they are consulting. My understanding is that a PA should be supervised by a qualified doctor. It sounds as though that's not happening all the time. They have, as you say, a 2-year course. Some of those courses I've read have a 100% pass rate. They're sometimes called medics, referred to as medics, when they're definitely not. They're referred to as cancer specialists, and so people assume they're getting an oncologist, but that's not what's happening here, is it? I mean, this should be a much bigger scandal than it is, surely.
Indeed, and I think, you know, I think many doctors have become increasingly concerned about this situation. You know, again, I think it's important to say, you know, everybody makes mistakes. You know, I'm a doctor, I'm not infallible. I've certainly made mistakes in my career. But, you know, on a systems level, you know, people that are less well trained are more likely to make mistakes than people who have, you know, more specialised training. And I think it's, you know, it's really important that we keep patient safety at the focus of this, rather than, you know, resorting to, you know, personal attacks. You know, we just need to remember this is a systems issue, and this is about making sure that vulnerable people, patients, are kept safe.
Yes, that's an excellent point. It's really about the system and whether the system is working. But there has been this open letter in the British Medical Journal from 28 leading medical practitioners. Now, they're alleging that their college and the General Medical Council and the Department of Health and Social Care have effectively colluded to mislead Parliament in claiming that the college approved legislation going through Parliament to regulate physician associates. Is there anything to that open letter? It's quite striking that this has come from a large number of leading medical practitioners.
So I think, so the background to this is that the Royal College of Physicians represents hospital doctors who are specialists in medicine, and they've in recent years hosted the Faculty of Physician Associates, so I believe that's going to close later this year. And earlier this year, there was an extraordinary general meeting of the Royal College of Physicians to discuss the wider issues around physician associates. And it wasn't handled well, to the extent that various senior leaders within the college, including the president, stepped down in its aftermath. And afterwards, learning was done. The Royal College of Physicians commissioned the King's Fund to undertake an independent learning review of how the issue had been handled. And the report was pretty damning, raised significant concerns about organisational governance, and it suggested that there was some organisational bias within the Royal College of Physicians, to the extent that the membership survey they did may have been, carried out with the aim of validating a predetermined point of view. And what the King's Fund report says is that if the extraordinary general meeting had been called earlier, it might have had an impact on the passage of the relevant legislation on PA regulation through Parliament. So the delay in calling the EGM has potentially had massive ramifications. Now, whether that is a conspiracy or whether it's just, a mistake, I can't say.
No, absolutely. But there is a suggestion, isn't there? Or there are certainly fears that there is a kind of ultimate objective here to end up with a two-tier medical system. In other words, if you're rich enough and you can go private, you can get a medically qualified doctor. If you're not, you might get a non-doctor. If you can't afford it, you might get someone who's not qualified, but you might not necessarily know that. I mean, is that fear reasonable?
I mean, I see this being borne out in my day-to-day work, to be honest. So I do some work as a private GP. My husband and I set up our own private GP service in Formby, where we live. And we find that a lot of patients who come to consult us explicitly are paying to see a private GP because they want to see a doctor. Now, I think, again, it's important, talking about systems issues, I would not blame, plenty of the local surgeries use physician associates, but it's not their fault. Due to the way GP funding works, until recently, they've not been allowed to use that money to pay for GPs. So it's, they have the choice. There's this thing called the Additional Roles Reimbursement Scheme, and literally they can claim reimbursement for the salaries of non-doctors, but not doctors. So I don't blame GP surgeries for feeling that they have to use physician associates in that situation. But yeah, I mean, patients do sometimes tell us that it wasn't immediately clear to them that they were seeing a physician associate when they went to their NHS GP surgery. And yeah, I mean, again, I think we are at risk of moving towards a two-tier system where those that can afford to pay will pay privately to see a GP, and those who can't will see, non-doctors on the NHS.
And I do understand your point about let's not target or blame individuals, but, we have had NHS trusts advertising PA posts as assistant physicians, and my understanding is it's not legal to call yourself a physician when you're not. So there must be some people who have made serious errors here, and the buck has to stop somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, sure. I don't disagree. But as I say, I think, this is why it's very positive that there's now an increase in awareness, I think, certainly within the medical profession and, more widely, that, the rollout of PAs has been, dare I say, perhaps relatively rushed. It's quite a new role, quite a new professional role. And actually now, increasingly, professional bodies are calling for a pause. I'm speaking in my own personal capacity, but I'm a member of the Council of the Royal College of General Practitioners, and certainly, at RCGP, the official policy now is that we oppose the use of physician associates in general practice. I think my personal view is that we all just need to stop, pause, and perhaps do some research. Actually look at the evidence. What can physician associates safely do? Which settings can they safely work in, if any? Is this a role, bearing in mind that physician associates are paid at band 7 on the Agenda for Change pay scale, which is about £45,000 a year starting salary. So it's a relatively high salary for perhaps quite a narrow scope of safe practice. So, long term, I think questions have to be asked. Is this actually a useful and workable role?
And as you say, more research, but also more discussion, more debate, rather than things being forced through without the public knowledge. I mean, do you think now, following these revelations and these scandals, that this target of 12,000 PAs by 2036, that will now be unlikely to be reached?
I mean, that's a political decision for the politicians to make, but I sincerely hope it isn't reached. I mean, I think, as I say, we need to stop and take stock. Again, we need to look at what role is there? given that it's quite a highly paid job role, is there much point in rolling it out if the safe scope of practice is very narrow? So hopefully we can all slow down and take time to make sure that this is being done properly.
Well, Dr. Heather Ryan, thanks so much for joining me and explaining that so clearly to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
And next on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be joined by Reverend Dr. Bernard Randall, who was banned from preaching for 5 years after he gave a sermon telling children they should question or be open to questioning certain teaching on LGBT relationships. He was eventually reported to prevent the government's counter-terrorism unit, so don't go anywhere.
Good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we go ahead into Monday, the rain should be clearing, then sunshine and showers for many of us before turning colder later into the week. So the unsettled conditions are all to do with this area of low pressure out towards the west and these fronts driving cloud and rain. So there could be some early evening sunshine towards the southwest, but otherwise cloud and rain continuing to move its way north and eastwards, affecting much of Scotland to start Monday morning. Clearer skies behind that, turning drier. We'll still see a few showers around, but temperatures generally staying up at around 10 or 11 degrees. So it is going to be a damp and gloomy start across Scotland. We've got outbreaks of rain persisting. This will gradually move its way northward. We've also got a strong easterly wind as well, giving a chilly feel to start the day. Cloudy conditions remaining across Northern Ireland with some showery outbreaks of rain here and pushing into northwestern parts of England. Further towards the south, hopefully waking up to some brighter skies, but also there are going to be some showers around. So that band of rain across Scotland will gradually move its way northwards, affecting much of Orkney and Shetland. Otherwise, it's a case of sunny spells, scattered showers. Some of these could be heavy, containing the odd rumble of thunder, perhaps emerging to give some longer spells of rain at times too. But where you do dodge the showers, we'll see temperatures rising up to 17, possibly 18 degrees towards the south, but unpleasant towards the north. Further spells of heavy rain moving their way northwards across Northern Ireland and into Scotland, and then towards the south through Tuesday, another cluster of showers. Again, could be on the heavy side. Some places may dodge these to see some sunny spells, and that continuing through Wednesday too. But as we go later on in the week, it is going to be turning colder from the north. Bye-bye.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. The Reverend Dr. Bernard Randall has been barred from preaching for 5 years after he gave a sermon telling children that they could question teaching on LGBT relationships. After losing his job at Trent College in Nottingham, he was reported to the terrorism watchdog, Prevent, and was also deemed by the Church of England as posing a risk to children. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has continually refused to allow Dr. Randall to bring a misconduct case against the Bishop of Derby, who barred him from preaching. This is despite a KC saying this decision was plainly wrong. The Church of England and the Diocese of Derby said that they could not comment on the matter during an ongoing legal case. So joining me now is the Reverend Dr. Bernard Randall. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, welcome back to the show, because, of course, you were here a few years ago to talk about this. But for those who didn't see that episode, maybe if you could explain
What on earth happened here?
What happened was that we had one of these very aggressively pro-LGBTQIA plus...
The whole acronym, yeah.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Came into the school to do some training, ostensibly to talk about eradicating homophobic bullying, which is good. But actually their aim was to embed gender identity and sexual orientation in the life of the school.
Yes.
And they had staff chanting about the need to smash heteronormativity.
Yeah.
Which, if you want to smash heteronormativity, you're entitled to think that, but as a Christian minister, that rang all sorts of alarm bells.
Were you in the meeting where you were asked to chant?
I was there.
Smash
yes.
heteronormativity.
I did not join in.
Well, I don't blame you. So, I mean, it sounds quite extreme, doesn't it? The idea of the activist coming in with a clear ideological point of view, and so then you gave this sermon explaining that actually it's OK to have a different point of view.
That's right, because one of the pupils said to me, can you talk in chapel about how come we're told we have to accept all this LGBT stuff in a Christian school?
Yes.
Which I thought, have to accept, that's a really important question. So I said, no, you don't have to accept. You make up your own mind. When it comes to ideologies...
Yes.
And differences of opinion, you make up your own mind. No one can tell you what you have to believe. So you may accept the Church's teaching that marriage is properly only of a man and a woman. You may believe that we're male and female and you can't change sex. Sometimes it matters. You may look at gender identity language and think, doesn't make sense, can't be more than partly true. But I emphasised repeatedly, respect the people you disagree with. Love your neighbour as yourself doesn't mean agree. It means respect that disagreement, respect the sincerity of the other side.
And I can back you up on this because I read the full text of the sermon, and it wasn't. And we have to be clear. You weren't saying attacking people for being gay is OK, or bullying people for this. Or it was about respectful disagreement. I
explicitly said discrimination is wrong. No excuse for personal attacks or abuse.
Yes.
I repeatedly said that because I wanted to make it absolutely clear. It's about the ideas. It's not about the people.
So where did the complaint come from? You were reported to a counter-terrorism watchdog, Prevent, by the school itself, is that right?
By the school, by the safeguarding lead at the school, who I would suggest may be fairly convinced of the LGBT activist position.
I would guess so.
Yeah.
If he or she considers this to be a form of terrorism, the idea of open discussion and debate.
It's subtle steps towards terrorism. Is that
right?
Make up your own mind today, and next week I'll be advocating Holocaust and genocide and so. I think
is that the logic of it?
That appears to be her logic. Yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely astonishing. So what happened then? When did you first hear about the fact that you'd been reported as a potential terrorist?
Well, I've been suspended by the school pending investigation. And as part of the process there, they sort of send you papers of what's going to be in the investigation. And just hidden in the papers, really, was a reference to reporting me to Prevent. So they didn't have the courtesy to tell me directly.
They didn't tell you?
Didn't tell me. I had to find it out accidentally, as it were.
That's the sort of thing you'd quite like to know.
Well, absolutely, yeah. And when we had the disciplinary meeting with the head, one of my questions was, do you think the Church of England is a terrorist organisation? To which I hope the obvious answer is no. And he said, oh, yes, we should have told you. The referral came back, didn't meet the criteria. And
right.
The relief in that moment. Yes, you should have told me.
Yes.
Goodness me, you should have told me that.
But as you say, the beliefs that you were espousing are no different from those of many mainstream religions.
Yeah, and absolutely the teaching of the Church of England, which, OK, it's going through a process of discussing these things, but it remains the official teaching of the Church. That's all I was advocating. You may believe. I wasn't even pushing it.
One thing I don't understand, though, is why that wasn't the end of it. Why were you ultimately barred from preaching for 5 years?
Because we live in a mad world. Honestly, I can't give a better explanation than that.
But this has come from the Bishop of Derby.
So, yes, so the school reported me to Prevent and to the local authority designated officer for safeguarding. They subsequently reported me to the Teaching Regulation Agency and the Disclosure and Barring Service, all for this sermon. All of those secular authorities cleared me. The local authority designated officer, within a day, had said, doesn't meet the criteria for safeguarding. This is just a dispute about beliefs between Reverend Randall and his employer. But the school also reported me to the church safeguarding authorities, who continue with the idea that somehow teaching the church's own doctrine is a safeguarding risk. It could cause harm to people.
So, wait a minute.
To hear a sermon of this kind.
The Church of England is apparently saying that to teach their own value system
is potentially terroristic.
That appears to be the kind of line they're taking.
OK.
Certainly harmful.
OK. So what's happened now? There's a judicial review going on, yes?
Yeah, so because I lost my job at the school, I have to have permission from the bishop to minister, to preach anywhere, and she refused to give me permission because of this safeguarding concern, so-called. So I can't... It's illegal for me to preach anywhere in England, possibly anywhere in the world, I'm not quite sure. So I complained about the bishop's conduct because I thought, this is clearly not something a bishop of the Church of England ought to be doing.
Sure.
And there is a process to safeguarding. She is supposed to tell me what the concern is.
Yeah.
But still, 5 years plus later, don't actually know what they say the safeguarding concern really is. I'm left to guess and work it out.
Is she intimating that all Church of England priests are breaking the law?
Well, that's the logical conclusion, that all Church of England clergy are a safeguarding risk, or at least those who accept the Church's teaching would be.
Yes.
But of course, I lost my job, and therefore I am subject to... I have to wait for her to give permission.
So what other recourse is there, though?
So all I could do is make a formal complaint about the bishop. I've also got employment tribunal proceedings against both the bishop and the school. Those are ongoing. Legal things take forever, unfortunately. But my formal complaint was rejected by the Archbishop of Canterbury, because when you complain about a bishop, it goes to the Archbishop. And he said nothing to see here at all.
On what grounds?
On the grounds that he didn't think there was anything wrong.
He doesn't think there's anything wrong with the Church declaring that their own teaching should be criminalised?
Your words, not mine.
Well, yeah, that's what it sounds like to me.
I hesitate to criticise him too hard. He's doing a very difficult job.
Well, you have to say that, of course.
And genuinely, he is doing a hard job. But he rejected it. I appealed, and this is where we had the opinion by the KC, who said he was plainly wrong.
Yes.
Went back to the Archbishop. He got the response from the bishop, and he said, no case to answer. So he dismissed it again. I appealed again, and the answer came back yet again, clearly wrong. You have to let this go forward. So it was investigated, and then it goes to the president of tribunals, who's the sort of chief legal officer, and she went back to, oh, there's nothing to see here. So we're judicially reviewing that decision. And
yes.
If I win the judicial review, then the Bishop of Derby would face court proceedings in a church court for effectively discrimination against a minister on religious grounds because I'm too Christian.
I mean, it's absolutely astonishing. And, of course, the Archbishop can't fall back on papal infallibility, can he? He doesn't have that.
No, he can't.
He can be wrong.
He can be very much he can be wrong. And the thing that really bothers me is that he has stood in the House of Lords and talked about the importance of freedom of speech and freedom of religion. But when it comes to his own backyard, he's not going to lift a finger, not even to try and bring some reconciliation and work out a solution. Yes. If the Church of England is established for any reason, it's to allow freedom of religion and freedom of speech for all in our society. And this should bother everybody because religious people with strong philosophical beliefs, particularly religious people, are more likely than most to say things which wider society thinks are odd, difficult, offensive, whatever it might be. And if the Church of England can't say, yes, our own beliefs, which many of you find odd and you're allowed to, but they must be freely spoken, the Church of England can't say that for its own doctrines, how is it going to support the free speech and the freedom of religion of all the other people in the country?
It's a very good point. And you say it's a mad world. I would urge people to read the full sermon so they understand just how crazy this story is and how this is all blown up out of nothing. Now, is there somewhere where people can read the sermon, find out more details about your case?
Well, they can search me online. There's plenty of stuff. But if I've been supported by a wonderful group called Christian Concern, who have been giving legal support to me, but also pastoral care, keeping me in one piece emotionally, spiritually. ChristianConcern.com/Bernard will take you to a page where there are links to more information about my case and also a link to donate to their legal fund if people are able and willing to do that, because these things don't come cheap.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for coming back on to talk about this. Dr. Randall, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And next on Free Speech Nation, Dawn Butler contributes to Black History Month, Bongo's Bingo goes bonkers, and Boris Johnson talks about a Roman statesman. It'll be time for social sensations in just 1 minute. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm going to see your show, Behind the Shoulder Pads, one night only at the Adelphi Theatre, October the 22nd. You're talking about your extraordinary life. Stage, screen, published author, 19
TV,
books, TV, most important.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who's managed to straddle, 7, 8 decades in showbiz and still be at the top?
Yes, I was thinking about that the other day because somebody said, you know, with the last of the good. There is Shirley MacLaine.
Sure.
She started the same time as me.
Right.
Sophia Loren.
Yeah.
She started around the same time.
She's not working much, though.
It's true, she's not, but she's still out there being, you know, a major icon. And of course, people like Dick Van Dyke, who's just almost 100.
Yeah, he's incredible,
you know,
isn't he?
I'm a mere babe next to him.
You are. But and I was thinking about, you've written some extraordinary, wicked, waspish diaries, which of course you can because you've worked with so many people. Look at the names: Frank Sinatra, Lana Turner, Elizabeth Taylor, Dean Martin, Gregory Peck,
Richard Burton,
Paul Newman. The list goes on and on. And Gene Kelly, my favourite. Was he your favourite?
Yes.
Why?
Because I saw him in a movie when I was a little girl called For Me and My Gal with Judy Garland, and I just fell in love with him. It's such a cute movie. Well, they don't make movies like that anymore. And then I was lucky enough when I first went to Hollywood at age 20 to meet him and literally hang out with him and his friends. And then I put him in a movie with me that I produced. He played my husband in a movie called Sins. And he was wonderful. He was really wonderful.
The People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. It's time for Social Sensations. That's where we look at what's been going viral on social media. And first up, this rather bizarre video from Labour MP Dawn Butler.
You are the wrong one, the violent one, the weird one, whereas I am the chosen one, because I am of the first ones. You see this skin I'm in, this beautiful mahogany brown, this skin you don't like, I believe. So why you try so hard to achieve by burning yourself in the sun? For me, there's no need, because I am the chosen one, for I am of the first ones. I know I'm black and beautiful, an African freedom fighter. My skin is my protection, and you, my friend, don't matter.
Now, it's very interesting because this isn't just being proud of being black or being proud of her race. This is about kind of ethno-nationalism, isn't it? Can you explain a bit more?
Yeah, it's, as you say, nothing wrong with being proud of your ethnicity. Brilliant.
Yeah.
But actually, that is the previous version of it. She then had to edit it and put it out again, because in that version, as you saw, there was a sort of montage of faces. Yes. And it turns out a bunch of them were rapists and terrorists and anti-Semites and whatever. Yeah. And that was sort of identified to her.
But also that image of the skull and saying that, you know, we were the first. I mean, it sounds a bit...
Also, this idea that you have to go get tanned to be like me, or you want to burn your skin, or... I don't know. It's just like, it's more division. That is not... You're not going to see Martin Luther King put out a video like that. That video is all about division.
And
I mean, and again, if we're going to have free speech, division 5, but you're a Labour MP, you represent your constituents.
Yeah, who are of all ethnicities.
Oh, who have all ethnicities.
Yes.
So you've basically announced to your constituents that, you know, you mean less than me. And
you're the violent one, you're
that's
the
point, isn't it? Why the division? What's the purpose of that? I mean, anyway, it's strange. And as you say, she's free to do it, absolutely.
Of course she's absolutely free to do it, but if you're representing people who put their faith and trust, you've just put fear into them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, have we got time for another quick video? Let's have a look. That was at the bingo, apparently. I've always thought the bingo was a dangerous place, you know?
I'm pretty sure that was me.
It's the sort of thing you would do, to be fair.
It's the sort of thing I would do.
I mean, I've seen you do stuff like that.
Drinking beer at bingo is my thing.
Bingo is so much fun.
Yes.
Bingo is brilliant. Not pouring pints of beer over your head, but
You're
a night of
making
bingo.
a serious case for bingo there.
Anyone who's done bingo knows how much fun it is. You
Josh
get totally
Howie
wasted.
loves bingo. That is a bombshell. We can't top that, so we're going to end the show right there. Thanks so much for joining us on Free Speech Nation. This was the week when Durham University Student Union cracked down on free speech. The potential vice presidents in America went head-to-head, and the UK government gave some islands away that we'd never heard of. But thanks to my panel, Josh Howie and Jojo Sutherland, and to all of my brilliant guests that you've seen this evening. And by the way, if you want to join us live here in the studio, that's dead easy. You can be part of this audience. All you need to do is go to www.sroaudiences.com and apply there and then come along. No one puts the www anymore, do they? I don't know why I said that. Anyway, do stay tuned because Mark Dolan tonight is coming up in just one moment. And don't forget that Headliners is on every night at 11 o'clock. That's the late night paper preview show, except we have comedians taking you through the next day's news stories instead of boring old commentators that you see on the other channels. Thanks ever so much for watching Free Speech Nation. I'm Andrew Doyle and I will see you next week.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we go ahead into Monday, the rain should be clearing, then sunshine and showers for many of us before turning colder later into the week. So the unsettled conditions are all to do with this area of low pressure out towards the west and these fronts driving cloud and rain. So there could be some early evening sunshine towards the southwest, but otherwise cloud and rain continuing to move its way north and eastwards, affecting much of Scotland to start Monday morning. Clearer skies behind that, turning drier. We'll still see a few showers around, but temperatures generally staying up at around 10 or 11 degrees. So it is going to be a damp and gloomy start across Scotland. We've got outbreaks of rain persisting. This will gradually move its way northward. We've also got a strong easterly wind as well, giving a chilly feel to start the day. Cloudy conditions remaining across Northern Ireland with some showery outbreaks of rain here and pushing into northwestern parts of England. Further towards the south, hopefully waking up to some brighter skies, but also there are going to be some showers around. So that band of rain across Scotland will gradually move its way northwards, affecting much of Orkney and Shetland. Otherwise, it's a case of sunny spells, scattered showers. Some of these could be heavy, containing the odd rumble of thunder, perhaps emerging to give some longer spells of rain at times too. But where you do dodge the showers, we'll see temperatures rising up to 17, possibly 18 degrees towards the south, but unpleasant towards the north. Further spells of heavy rain moving their way northwards across Northern Ireland and into Scotland, and then towards the south through Tuesday, another cluster of showers. Again, could be on the heavy side. Some places may dodge these to see some sunny spells, and that continuing through Wednesday too. But as we go later on in the week, it is going to be turning colder from the north. Bye-bye.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street